Transport Minister Barbara Creecy announced that the 2025 Easter road crashes and fatalities were the lowest in the last 3 years. She says all provinces recorded a decrease in crashes other than Mpumalanga as well as the Eastern Cape. Now, Creecy is calling on SANTACO to do more public education on vehicle roadworthiness and the use of safety belts for all long-distance taxis. For more on this, we're going to chat to the Santacos national spokesperson, Phala, who joins us now. Rebecca, thank you so much for the time. I don't know, for my own sake, I've continuously gone around and as I'm driving, I continuously see minibus taxis that certainly look like they aren't roadworthy. Is Santaco itself aware of taxis and minibuses that aren't roadworthy?
Good morning to you and the viewers. Truly, yes, especially for majority of our local trips, we're quite aware that in some areas, for instance, immediately when you think of the province of Gauteng, areas like Johannesburg as well as Midrand have got a number of those vehicles that just from looking at it, you can immediately tell that it would most likely fail a vehicle roadworthiness test. In terms of our long distance taxis, though, the story is entirely different. The experience that we have is that majority of them use latest vehicles, majority of which are bigger in size and also a lot more comfortable because of the time that our commuters spend in the cars. But needless to say, we shouldn't be even making comparisons between either a local or a long distance trip. The reality of the matter is all our cars should always be roadworthy because we're ferrying people. And in that particular regard, we need to always make sure that we preserve their lives.
Yeah, I mean, so with that in mind, then, what would Santaco's response be to Minister Creecy's suggestion and call for the organization to do more public education on roadworthiness and the use of safety belts for those long-distance taxis in particular?
So we take the minister's clarion call with absolute good energy. It is an extension of the responsibility that we have. We need to always make sure that the vehicles that we ferry South Africans in are roadworthy. And that's why we have, on a number of occasions, drawn a lot of, hope in the existing Taxi Recapitalisation Programme, which is meant to give vehicle owners a startup amount of money for them to scrap the old vehicles and put it in, perhaps as a deposit, to find a new vehicle. The conversation that we're having on the side with the minister is twofold. One, to de-risk the industry so that even when this money is being given, they are not paying the exorbitant amounts that we're being made to pay, especially in terms of monthly installments. That conversation is ongoing with the help of government. But also we're hoping that the amount of money that's being given now will be re-looked at, because when you compare it to the amount of money that you would require to get a brand new vehicle, it doesn't do much of a difference, which has led to there being a lot less of an uptake from our operators in terms of getting their old cars scrapped. But in addition to that, through our Tlokomela Road Safety campaign, we've really been driving the message, especially of the use of seat belts, but also ensuring that people are being ferried in roadworthy vehicles. And what we've also found is when drivers hear from other drivers, they tend to listen a lot more because this is one of their own. Yep. So the campaign throughout Easter, we started with really working closely with some of the drivers to drive the message. So we're definitely going to continue with the efforts.
Should there be a need for stricter control in a way of maybe, I don't know, regulations and the like then regarding the kind of vehicles that are on our roads, particularly for those long-term, long-distance trips?
So the reality of the matter is we do have regulations. I mean, for the mere fact that every year a vehicle owner has got to go and get a roadworthy certificate, already it tells you that that already is in existence. the kind of loophole that's been identified, even with the admission of the necessary, authorities, is that sometimes there are loopholes, some of which could be termed as a sense of corruption, and that even when a vehicle is not roadworthy, when it goes for the test, it gets passed as though it is roadworthy. Because of that, that poses a massive threat. And that's one of the other clarion calls that we're asking, especially to the relevant authorities that have been given the mandate to always make sure that the vehicles that get to be given roadworthy certificates are indeed roadworthy. This will help us in our side to say, as and when we discontinue a vehicle or we tell an operator that this car has to be discontinued, we don't then have them producing a roadworthy certificate of a vehicle that perhaps has smooth tires or has got brake failures or just looks like it's not habitable for just about anyone to get into. So it is a collaborative effort. We believe that the regulations are there. It just has to be heightened in terms of the enforcement, and some of these loopholes of there being monies that perhaps get to be taken in exchange for faulty certification to be given. That also has to be dealt with.
Very important, actually, to deal with that. All right, so a few years ago, and it's quite a number of years ago, in fact, then presumably more than a decade, there were sort of newer taxis that came onto South Africa's roads. Does that program need to be revisited, whether it's in the form of new taxis or just a full-scale revamp of the taxis we currently have?
So we don't necessarily think that there's a crisis in terms of some of the minibus vehicles that are being produced. You can think of the immediate big names that come to mind. The durability is clear for all to see. Hence, you will find varied models of these vehicles still being on the road, and in some instances, some of them still being in good condition. It's just a question of vehicle owners really taking the responsibility of understanding the lifespan of a vehicle and also looking after a vehicle. Again, a collective responsibility that also talks to the issue of the driver, ensuring that they drive the vehicle with an understanding that it is faring people. It again is a source of income for their family and the family of the operator. But then again, Arabile, there's also the question of the kind of roads that our cars are being driven on a daily. The potholes that we encounter are also just adding on to ensuring that, vehicles don't then have the durability that you would expect naturally, because it's terrible. When it's rainy, it's even worse. And because of that, that also then adds on to the state of the kind of vehicles that we drive and the kind of time that they can be used before you start to see that this vehicle might just not be good for the road. But generally, we don't think we've got a crisis in terms of the vehicles that are being produced and sold as minibuses. It's just really a question of this collaborative effort, owners knowing when to ensure that a car is still roadworthy or whether they need a new one. Drivers always understanding that they've got to look after the car, they've got to drive responsibly, but government also ensuring that the roads, are durable and the roads are also friendly in terms of some of these trips that we have to undertake. Because you remember the taxi industry goes just about everywhere, every township, every place, really, despite the kind of road conditions that we may be dealing with.
Yeah, very important. Rebecca, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us then this morning. Rebecca Phala, Santacos spokesperson, then national spokesperson, that is, then vehicle roadworthiness awareness, particularly then for the taxi industry when it comes to long distance hauling for that industry.